Please would you welcome Professor Glen Jeffery.
Thank you very much indeed. It really is a privilege for me to come to meetings like this because I'm not a clinician, so I don't see you in the clinic. I sit away in a laboratory somewhere, isolated from the rest of the world. And I think it actually is desperately important that people like myself and that people like members of my team do have a lot of contact with people like yourselves, who are the consumers, essentially, of our research. And I would emphasize that you, as taxpayers, or people that have been taxpayers, pay my salary. And as a consequence of that, you should feel perfectly free to email me, hassle me, or whatever you feel is appropriate, so that actually you get the information that you need, rather than trying to wade through scientific papers that actually are not pitched at the level that many of you are really going to grasp. I should make a number of points. First is that fundamentally I'm a university academic, and consequently I used to spend a lot of my time giving lectures with PowerPoint demonstrations and whiteboards and all the rest of it. And I was told I couldn't do that. So I've got to speak to you without visual aids, and you don't know, that is actually like standing here naked in front of you. I am completely disarmed because all my support material is gone. However, as pointed out by one of my members of my staff, he said, well, listen, half the people in the audience can't see you, so it doesn't matter anyway. So, fine. How did I get into macular degeneration, and why am I interested in it? Well, when I was younger, I was interested in neural development, how the retina develops. As I got older, I started to realize my own vision was declining just with age. Just with age. I was missing those traffic lights on my bike, etc. And I developed an interest in it. What brings us to this room? What's the biology that brings us here? Because we all know it's about aging, but it's actually about something slightly different as well. And that's the fact that your retina uses more energy than any other part of your body during normal function. Okay? It uses more than muscle, it uses more than cardiac tissue, it uses more than the liver. It is an enormous consumer of energy. Now, I like to think about it as the body's sports car. It comes out the garage new, works phenomenally well, but literally 10 years later, it's burnt out. You know, it is not your Ford Cortina, which should have been trashed years ago, but you still see them on the streets. Okay? So your biggest initial problem is the very, very high energy consumption of your retina. Now, this does a number of things. Firstly, because you're consuming energy, you tend to produce a lot of rubbish as a byproduct. And some of that rubbish, some of that byproduct is drusen, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. Drusen is fundamentally, when you look into it, it's the contents of a rubbish bin. People go and they're looking for specific things in drusen. You will find whatever you want to find in drusen, as you will if you go through a trash can. But many of the things in that trash can are also inflammatory. So you suffer from a lot of deposited material that you don't want. You really want to get rid of it, and you can't. Because as you live longer, that sports car needs retuning, it needs decoking, and it's not getting it. So it just produces a lot of CO2 and a lot of rubbish. You also are suffering from the fact that the back of your eye is slowly becoming inflamed. Now that's true of me. I've actually tried to measure the inflammation in the back of my eye. I'm 60. It's there. It's there as chronic, low-level inflammation over a long period of time. Most people probably over the ages of 45. Remember, biologically, we're not supposed to live that long. If you go back to the Neolithic, you're talking about people who are living 35 to 40. They didn't have macular degeneration on the whole. So we live too long, we generate lots of rubbish at the back of our eye. That rubbish cuts off some of the blood supply to the back of our eye, to our photoreceptors. Our retinae become inflamed, and then slowly, over a period of time, cells die. Now, if you don't have macular degeneration, you do exercise every day, you are a vegetarian, you do all the things you should do, you're still going to lose 30% of your photoreceptors in the center of your eye by the time you're 70. That's the sports car effect. You're just burning out. And those are the features that I want to get to. I want to get to energy consumption. Can I deal with the fact that you're demanding so much energy? Can I deal with the fact of clearing the rubbish out? Now, remember, I don't see patients, so lots of my stuff is on mice, and mice are wholly inappropriate because they don't have a macula, but they're the best thing I can do. It's the best thing I can get my hands on. So, we start off as a population with declining visual function with age, we have inflammation, we have deposition, and in some of you, perhaps for genetic reasons, perhaps for lifestyle reasons, perhaps reasons we never know, it tips over. It goes from normal aging to geographic atrophy, and then in a smaller proportion of you, from geographic atrophy into wet AMD. So, what can we deal with? What have we got in our armoury? I want to tell you about three things, because I believe fundamentally that we can retard the development of AMD, and in some of you, we might be able to retard it to a walking pace, which is what our main aim is to retard its development. I want to talk about three things. One of them is actually a little bit mundane, but is actually quite important. The last speaker spoke about vitamins, and there is definitely something there. But that study that he's talking about didn't include one key vitamin, which was vitamin D. Why is vitamin D important? Vitamin D levels are important for inflammation. If you've got low levels of vitamin D, you will generally have higher than average levels of inflammation. So 20% of the patients in a diabetic clinic at St George's Hospital had no recordable vitamin D. 30% of undergraduates at Birmingham University in their first year had no recordable vitamin D. They also have worrying levels of alcohol in their bloods. Actually, that was much worse than the vitamin D. So we know if we take mice that are models of AMD, if we take mice that are very old and we give them vitamin D, not vast quantities, just a small amount, take them off the floor, you can actually reduce inflammation at the back of the eye. But do also remember you can stand on a beach in Portugal and you can build up 20,000 units of vitamin D and not get a sunburn, because we get our vitamin D from sunlight. So maintaining a low level of vitamin D is well established as a way of reducing inflammation. That's number one. Number two, I did something that I regret. I worked for a drug company on a contract once. It wasn't a great experience, but they gave me a drug, and they said, this drug is going to be really good for blocking AMD. So we gave the drug as eye drops to mice. Fantastic. It got in. But then they give you a drug, they give you something else next to the drug to test it, and that's called a control. And it's kind of similar to this drug, but it's not this drug. So we gave them all the data. I was looking at the lab's bank balance. It was improving. I did the study blind. I didn't know what was what. Faces dropped when I showed them the data. Faces dropped because their drug was useless. But the thing that they said was that was the control, that was the vehicle which should do nothing, had a dramatic effect. The drug was called Cyclodextrin. It's FDA approved. I've eaten it. It's a sugar. So I said to them, isn't this fantastic, Cyclodextrin? And they said, no, we can't make any money out of that. No money at all. So then I had a little letter saying, you can't publish any of these data, and that's the end of the study. So I kind of said, there's places called the Daily Mail and the Guardian, and I'm going to ring them. A battle went on for a period of time, and in the end, I won it. We did get the chance to publish. The study went nowhere in the long run because there's no money in it. No drug company is going to make money out of a sugar molecule which you can buy relatively easily called cyclodextrin. There's your problem. Your problem is there's stuff out there that may be helpful, but even when I went to University College and said, look, this drug, it does this, and their first reaction was, where's the intellectual property? Where's the route to making the money, not helping the patient? That was a bitter experience, but it wasn't the first experience. Let me tell you about the third thing. You have inflammation in your eyes, and inflammation is driving cell death. One of the reasons you've got inflammation is that energy demand. So every cell in your body has got a battery in it, and the battery is called a mitochondria. But like batteries in sports cars, they get old, they stop producing energy, and they start leaking acid. That's exactly what your cells in your body do. The mitochondria, they get run down. Fortuitously, we found a way of recharging the battery. Now, we did it very simply with a series of lights that just happens that the battery absorbs. All sounded a bit wacky, lights, recharging batteries, but it worked. So, for instance, if you look at me, this body's 60. This eye is definitely 60. But we've been treating this eye, as everybody in my lab has been treating one eye, for quite some time. So this eye is roughly 42 to 47 in terms of its responses. So again, I go to University College and I say, hang on, there's a series of lights we can use which may be recharging mitochondrial batteries. They cost nothing, they're perfectly safe. First question, where's the intellectual property? Where's the route to the money with this one? I said, well, there isn't actually a route to money, but you can buy these LEDs and you can probably put them together. It's totally safe, and nothing happened. Now, we've now done that. We've been treating mice that models of macular degeneration. The last speaker told you about factor H mice. We've been treating those, absolutely fine. We can reduce inflammation, we can reduce debris, we can reduce cell loss. I do like one of the great things when he was talking about genes. Genes are desperately important in your situation. But as I was reminded by my graduate student, I share 50% of my genetic information with a banana. So that always kind of slightly confuses me about where we are in relation to other animals. But if I share 50% of my information with a banana, does that actually mean that I actually am more justified on working on mice? Because mice are a lot closer to me than a banana is. So, lights. We actually have started treating a few people. People have heard about it and they've started treating themselves, and they're people that suffer from a condition called birdshot, which is a chronic inflammation at the back of the eye. In the end, they went and bought their own devices and basically started treating themselves. So, I'd like to give you a global picture, and the global picture is there's a lot just below the horizon. There's a hell of a lot. The problem is, how do we translate what's below the horizon that the scientists know about and get it into the clinic? Well, many of the clinicians are great. I mean, I work with clinicians at Moorfields, and we bang our heads against the wall. We bang our heads against the wall because even hospitals don't want to spend money unless there's intellectual property in a product. And that is a real problem that you as a community have to face. The drug companies, one of the nice things about the light therapy we use is there is some evidence, it's not strong, there is some evidence it reduces wrinkles in skin. Intellectually, that makes sense. One company set up to actually produce devices to do this. Within 6 months, L'Oreal had bought them out and sacked them all, and the whole thing was closed down. So there has to, L'Oreal were going to lose money, so there has to be a route to the money, and I cannot resolve that problem. I think that is a problem that you need to resolve as a community and actually start shouting at people. Shouting at drug companies have an interest in you being where you are. They don't have an interest in the cheap thing, which is what we want to do. We want to derail the disease early. When we know you've got it in one eye, we want to derail it in the other eye so that actually, if nothing else, you're left with one good eye. Not very good for binocular vision, but you can still read the newspaper and watch telly. Thank you very much.